We're talking a very small number of the overall market. It isn't really a big change in the number of buyers that are coming from out of state year over year. It doesn't mean they're buying a property and displacing a local family. There's always a lot of talk in Hawaii about what do we do about people from outside of Hawaii buying all of the property and making it hard for people to live here and driving up property prices. And there's discussions in the state legislature about banning foreign buyers and limiting people from the mainland and all kinds of different things. And the question I always have back to it is, will it solve the problem, or is it really a problem to begin with? And so, of course, I like to look at the data and see what's actually happening and not what just we feel, right? And our friends over at Title Guarantee track this data. And so I'm going to bring in some data here and show it to you guys and go island by island and talk about what the proportion of mainland and foreign buyers are to people who are here in Hawaii. And the only way that you can really track this is what their address was at the time of purchase, right? Because we don't verify where they live or what their citizenship is or any of that stuff. It's like if they have an address from out of state, then they're counted as an out of state buyer. An international address, and they counted as international buyer. But we'll go island by island, and we'll start with the highest proportion of Hawaii buyers, which is on the island of Oahu. So if we look at this breakdown, and it shows you the difference between 2023 and 2024. So the 2024 data is finally completely in, and so we can look at it and compare it to the year prior. And if we look at in 2023, about 80% of buyers came from inside the state, and it was 81% in 2024. So actually more buyers came from inside the state in 24 and in 24, 15% were from out of state and 3% were international buyers. And this further breaks down, and if you want to copy these slides, just reach out to me, I can send them to you. But it breaks down the exact number of which states they came from. So California was the highest state, then Washington, then Texas, then Nevada. But the numbers get pretty small after that. And then Japan was the highest number of international buyers, and then Korea, Canada, China, and Taiwan. So on Oahu, 81% of folks that bought had a Hawaii address when they bought, and pretty small percentage, right? We're from out of state or foreign. And then if we go to Maui, so in Maui there was 1,471 sales in 24. There was 1,481 sales, so almost exact, just 10 sales off. But in 23, there was 68% of buyers were from in-state, and it was 70%. So actually more in-state buyers on Maui in 2024 than in 2023. 27% were from out of state, and 3% were international. And if you look at the breakdown of states, it's pretty much the same. California, Washington, Texas, Arizona are where the out of state buyers are coming from, but the vast majority, 70%, are coming from inside the state. And then looking at Kauai, there was 693 sales in 2024, 643 sales, so a few more sales in 24 than 23. But the big change here was in 23, it was 59% were in-state, 40% were out-of-state, 1% were international. In 2024, it was 67%, so 8% more local in-state buyers purchased in 2024. It was 33% from out-of-state and 1% international. And the breakdown somewhat similar in terms of the where they came from. It's California, Utah, Nevada, Colorado are the top three outside of the state locations where buyers came from, and then Canada, New Zealand, Norway, and Australia. But Norway and Australia, just one purchase each from those international buyers, only 3. So really, if you look at it overall, there was really only 6 international buyers on the island of Kauai. So very few, very small number overall. If you're looking to relocate here on the Big Island, I want to share with you a resource that we put together. Over 80 agents from my team, expert agents here on the Big Island, put together a relocation guide that will help you evaluate all of the important factors that you want to take into account before you move here to the Big Island. School districts, healthcare, employment, all of the things that you got to think about, we put into one home buyer's guide that will help you figure out what is best when you start this relocation process here to the Big Island. So if you want this guide, just click on the link below, fill out the form. We will send you the guide for free. And if you want to take the next steps and have a conversation with us, we'd be happy to help. And then the Big Island has by far the highest proportion of buyers that are coming from out of state. So in 2023, out of the 3,640 sales, 64% were inside of Hawaii, 35% from the mainland, and then 1% international. And then in 2024, out of the 3,945 sales, 60%. So Big Island saw a lower proportion of in-state buyers. 39% were from out of state and 1% were international. So when we're having a discussion about banning, especially international buyers, I mean, we're talking a very, very, very small number of the overall market. And in general, if you look at this data over time, over the last 20 years, the proportions for each island are pretty much the same. So there isn't really a big change in the number of buyers that are coming from out of state year over year. It's pretty similar, varies by a couple of percentage points, but it's not a new issue, right? It's not something that has happened, just started happening in the last couple of years and has changed the dynamic of the market here. The market has always had a proportion of out of state buyers. And one of the points that I often remind people of when it comes to this discussion is that just because somebody comes from out of state, it doesn't mean they're buying a property and displacing a local family, right? A lot of times what we see a normal business cycle in Hawaii is that someone comes here between 55 and 65, they retire, maybe they sell a property in the mainland. Their dream was always to come here, so they buy a property here. They spend 10 years here, 10, 15 years here, and now when they're 65 to 80, they're actually selling that property and moving back to the mainland for various different reasons. They want to be closer to their family. Nobody visits them like they thought they would. They have some type of health issue that requires them to be back on the mainland, or they just miss where they came from and they want to spend their latter years in the mainland. So it's not always a net loss of property to someone from out of state. Sometimes it's somebody from out of state who's selling that's just going back and they're being replaced by somebody that is in their shoes just 10 or 15 years later. So it's something to consider. But overall, if you look at the data, it hasn't changed over the years. It's very, very consistent. But the vast majority across the state, over 70% of buyers that are purchasing property from within the state. So it's not like this huge majority is all of the properties are being bought by people that are foreign or from outside of the state, which is a lot of times the narrative that you hear in the media. So if you have any questions about this, or you want to dive deeper into the data, happy to share all of this information with you. You can always email me at dylan@buybigisland.com, or if you have anything you want to talk about real estate related, there's always a link in the description below to my calendar. You can book directly into it and we'll get on a Google Meet and talk through your issues. So always appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully this helps some perspective on where buyers come from, and I'll see you guys next week. Aloha.